we should develop some important documents to handle this performance evaluation and management, that is performance evaluation forms and procedure. Today's session is about the performance evaluation forms and procedure. By the topic, you can understand there are two main component or parts of this topic, that is performance evaluation forms, and another part is performance evaluation procedures. These are the intended learning outcomes of the today's session. After studying this session successfully, you should be able to describe main differences between performance evaluation forms and the performance evaluation procedure. As I mentioned earlier, there are two main components of the today's topic, that is performance evaluation form and procedures. That is not the same thing. There are several differences between these two elements of the performance evaluation process. We'll discuss that differences with the basic understanding of what is performance evaluation form and what is performance evaluation procedure. Then identify two basic approaches in designing performance evaluation forms and procedure. As you are in HR undergraduate reading a specialized degree in the field of human resource management, we hope that you are going to be a HR manager. For that, you should have ability to develop these performance evaluation forms and procedure. For that, we'll discuss how to develop performance evaluation forms and procedure. There are two main approaches. We'll discuss one by one in this session. Then describe some recommendations for deciding the better performance evaluation forms and procedures. In human resource management, there is no universal accepted template or format to develop performance evaluation forms and procedure. That is depend on the organizational requirement. Each and every organizations are not the same. As per their requirement, they should develop their own performance evaluation forms and procedures. Therefore, if you become a HR manager, you may have to develop performance evaluation forms and procedure. For that, in this session, we recommend you to follow some steps or some basic recommendations to follow when you are developing better or best performance evaluation forms and procedure. Where whenever you can use these set recommendations, if you are in a service sector organization or production manufacturing sector organization or wherever, you can use these recommendations to develop performance evaluation forms and procedure. Then we move to the explain content of the typical performance evaluation form. We'll discuss some typical performance evaluation form, sample performance evaluation form, and the sample performance evaluation procedure for your better understanding. Then we move to the session. Basically, we are in a systematic process of performance evaluation and management. In our systematic process of performance evaluation and management, as a first step, we already decide or establish what are the objectives of doing performance evaluation and performance management. Then we develop performance evaluation policies. In the policies, we decide basic answers for the four main problems or questions when you are doing performance evaluation and management in an organization. With that policy decision, then we identify performance evaluation criteria and then the relevant standards for that criteria. After that, we discuss there are several performance evaluation methods, from the GAPIC rating scale method to 360-degree feedback evaluation method. We discuss several or some performance evaluation methods. Out of this method, you can use one method or many methods to evaluate your employees' performance. Then we have to implement this decision. For that, it is required some tools. Actually, in this session, we are discussing how to develop these basic tools helpful to implement this systematic process. These tools basically need for performance evaluation. When we discuss about the what is performance evaluation, it is gathering evidence about the employee's performance. If we gathered or collect evidence about the actual performance of the employee, it is required to keep record. For that, we want to develop some tools how to keep records about the employee's performance. For that, we develop separate tool for that. Then another tool is required how to process this performance evaluation, how to proceed this performance evaluation. For that, as a HR department, it is not practical to do performance evaluation for each and every employees by the HR department employees. It is not practical. Therefore, we want to assign some evaluators out of the HR department. Most of the time, immediate superior may be the evaluator. In the 360-degree feedback method, there are several evaluators. If we get support from the several other evaluators, we want to communicate how to proceed this performance evaluation process, how to collect evidence about the actual performance of the employee. For that, we want to give some basic guidelines. For that, we want to design some basic tools, that is performance evaluation procedure. Then deciding performance evaluation form and procedure is our fifth step of the performance evaluation systematic process. Now we are in the fifth step of the systematic process. Before developing performance evaluation forms and procedure, you should have clear idea about what is performance evaluation form and what is performance evaluation procedure. That performance evaluation form is introduced by this slide. Performance evaluation form is the heart of the performance evaluation, because in our performance evaluation, we are going to collect evidence about the performance of the actual performance of the employee. If we collect evidence, it should be kept recorded. For that is essential. For that we use some tools, that is performance evaluation form. It is a specific form when I ask what is performance evaluation form, the answer is there. It is a specific form used by an evaluator. Evaluator means the person who are collecting evidence about the employee's performance for the purpose of evaluate employees' performance and record it. Basically, the performance evaluation form is used to evaluate employee performance. It means collect evidence in a systematic way and the record it, that collected evidence. For that, we use performance evaluation form. When we discuss about the nature of the performance evaluation form, it is visualized the nature of performance evaluation process and the content, what factors, what criteria and standards we are using, and the complexity of the performance evaluation process of the organization. Therefore, it is on the other hand, performance evaluation form can be described as the visual tool, the showing nature, content, and complexity of the performance evaluation process of the organization. By looking at the performance evaluation form in the organization, it is possible to judge the nature, quality of the performance evaluation in that organization to a certain extent. We cannot get the complete picture about the performance evaluation process by looking at the performance evaluation form, but some extent we can, because that is performance evaluation form is displayed what are the performance evaluation criteria and standards, the way to collect evidence, who are the evaluator. Likewise, this basic information is there. Therefore, we can use to judge about the performance evaluation process. The form indicate the method and methods. Or method, if we use one performance evaluation method like graphic rating scale method, or sometime graphic rating scale method with essay method, essay approach. Likewise, there are several methods as a combination we can use, and some criteria and standards being used to the performance evaluation can be understand with the performance evaluation form. Another component is performance evaluation procedure. The procedure is the simple idea of procedure is the systematic guidelines. Performance evaluation procedure is the method used to handling the performance evaluation form basically. Now we have idea about the performance evaluation form. That form is used to collect evidence and record collected evidence. We get support from the outside evaluators, that means out of the HR department employees. If the evaluator is HR department, that make clear they have some idea about the performance evaluation forms and procedure. That is not necessary to give the written guidelines to complete performance evaluation forms to the HR department employees. But when we collect evidence from the production department, as example, production supervisor as the immediate superior, they may become an evaluator. Therefore, but that supervisor may not have clear idea about the performance evaluation and the performance evaluation process and the performance evaluation forms. Therefore, we should give them to clear guidelines how to fill this performance evaluation form. That is, the fill up performance evaluation form is their role as the evaluator. The procedure is used to give a broad meaning, that is a standing plan giving a necessary specific guidelines to complete the performance evaluation form. The basic purpose of designing performance evaluation procedure is to communicate the specific guidelines to complete the performance evaluation form. The procedure outlines specific steps to follow in particular recurring situation. Recurring situation mean in this lecture is in a recurring situation. Procedure is also we can use recurrently. It means, but performance evaluation form we cannot use recurrently. That means if we develop proper performance evaluation procedure or best performance evaluation procedure, we can use that procedure to evaluate employees' performance in this year as well as in next year, as well as after the next year. We can use continuously that procedure, but performance evaluation form is just to keep records. If we use some particular form, some specific form to keep record about the particular employee, that is as example NIMAL in HR department, if we use form A to evaluate this year performance about the NIMAL's NIMAL's performance, that form is completed. After completing VE forms, next year we cannot use that form. But if we develop the best or good employee performance evaluation procedure, that procedure can be used in next year as well as after the next year. Specifically speaking, performance evaluation procedure is a guideline to action setting. List of chronological steps to be followed in doing performance evaluation. Firstly, the evaluator what should do, then what should do the evaluator. Likewise, the chronological steps are given by the performance evaluation procedure. That steps should be followed by the performance evaluator. Broadly, the performance evaluation procedure gives the relevant specific guidelines to complete the performance evaluation form. The final results of the basic purpose of performance evaluation procedure is to communicate specific guidelines for completing the performance evaluation form. That is the basic purpose of deciding performance evaluation procedure. Without proper performance evaluation procedure, we cannot communicate that specific guidelines with the performance evaluator. Therefore, the basic purpose of designing performance evaluation procedure is to communicate relevant specific guidelines with the evaluator. The basic purpose of deciding performance evaluation form is to collect actual performance of the employee and keep record it. That is main purpose to deciding performance evaluation form. I think you have a clear idea about the performance evaluation form and procedure. Form is the specific document the evaluator use to employees' performance evaluation and record their performance. The procedure is the document that gives specific guidelines to follow or complete the performance evaluation form. The main purpose of performance evaluation form is record keeping about them, keep records about the employee's performance. But the main purpose of the performance evaluation procedure is to communicate relevant specific guidelines with the evaluator. By looking at the performance evaluation form, we can get some idea about the performance evaluation methods, criteria, standards, likewise. But when we look at the performance evaluation procedure, we can get some idea about the performance evaluation policies and the standards, basically. Then we are going to design performance evaluation forms and procedure. When we are going to develop performance evaluation forms and procedure, there are two main approaches, basic approaches in deciding performance evaluation forms and procedure. That is general approach and the specific approach. We are going to discuss one by one. The general approach is involves designing a single form and procedure common to performance evaluation of all the employees working in the organization. When we use example for clarify this two approaches. This is hypothetical organizational hierarchy. There is a CEO. Under the CEO, there are production manager, marketing manager, HR manager, and finance manager. Under the production manager, there are supervisors, under the marketing manager, there are executive employees, under the HR department, also there are HR executive, production manager is also have, oh, sorry, finance manager is also have accountant and the finance executive. Under the supervisor, there are operative employees. There are 20 operative employees under the supervisor 1, and thirty. When we assume that this hypothetical organization we can categorize the employees into three groups. Employees into three main categories. That is, in this category is top management, mid-level management, and the operative employees. Operative employees. These are the three main categories of this organization. When we are in the common or general approach, that is here, general approach. This approach involves designing a single form and procedure common to performance evaluation of all employees working in the organization. That means without considering the employee category or employee grade, we design one common performance evaluation forms and procedure to evaluate CEO's employees and the production employees. When we are discussing about the general approach, if this organization is used general approach of performance evaluation forms and procedure, the CEO performance is also evaluated by using the same performance evaluation form. When we are evaluating the performance of production manager, it also uses the same performance evaluation form and the same procedure. The marketing manager is also by using the same performance evaluation forms and procedure. Not only that, when we are evaluating, we are going to evaluate the production employees, these 20 production employees performance. It also uses the form which we are using to evaluate CEO performance evaluating CEO's performance and the production manager's performance, the same forms and procedure is used for evaluating this production employees performance. It means without considering the types of employees or their level of employment, we are designing one or single form and procedure that use as the same performance evaluation. Generally, use of single with that understanding, you can think about this is good practice or this is not good or bad practice. Generally, use of single form and procedure for evaluating all the employees is not appropriate. The reasons for that is not appropriate practice because there are various types of employees. In our organization, there are 3 categories of employees: top management employees or mid-level managers and managerial employees, and the operative employees. In here, such as managers, some other organization may have managers, engineers, accountant, clerk, and laborers performing in a different tasks and duties. In our organization, it is also same. Production employees under the operative employee category, they are performing different tasks, duties, and responsibilities. But when we are thinking about the CEO of the organization, he or she is involving to perform different tasks, that is from the operative employees. Different employees need to be evaluated according to different criteria and standards. When we are using same performance evaluation criteria, we are evaluating by using same factors to evaluate all the types of employees. That is not practical. Therefore, different employees need to be evaluated according to the different criteria and standards. However, there are small advantages of this method. Is convenient to administrative, because then we are designing only one performance evaluation form and procedure that is enough for evaluating all the types of employees. Designing part is very easy, but implementation part, there are a lot of problems in this approach. It can develop only one performance evaluation form. Therefore, designing cost is very low. That is another advantage of this approach. But practically, this approach cannot be applied for any organization. In today's organizational situation, in a small and medium scale organization, is also the different employees are performing different tasks, duties, and responsibilities. Therefore, they should consider that employees' performance under the different performance evaluation criteria and standards. Therefore, general approach is not appropriate, at least for evaluating small and medium scale organization. The second approach is specific approach, that is opposite side of the general approach. This approach focuses on designing separate forms and procedures for different types of employees. In our example, there are 3 types of employees: top management, middle management, operative employees. In here, we can use 3 different performance evaluation forms and procedures to evaluate these three types of employees, at least three forms and procedure. It is better to develop separate forms and procedures to evaluate each jobs in the organization, but it is very costly and time consuming. Therefore, at least to develop three forms and procedure for this types of employee organization, at least we should develop three types of three different performance evaluation forms and procedures. Ideally, separate performance evaluation forms and procedures are developed for each types of employees. Production employees, it is better to we can develop separate performance evaluation forms and procedure for the production employees. There are 50 production employees in our organization. Therefore, it's better to develop separate performance evaluation forms and procedure to evaluate that 50 employees. It's better to design separate performance evaluation forms and procedure to evaluate the production, the job of performance of the production manager. Then another separate performance evaluation forms for supervisor. Another separate performance evaluation forms for HR manager, and another separate performance evaluation forms for HR executive. In this approach, we are developing separate performance evaluation forms for each types of employees. However, it is important to note that there is no universally accepted classification of jobs or employees. There is no universal accepted managerial employees. These are the managerial employees, these are the non-managerial employees. These are the operative employees, and these are the non-operative employees. Likewise, there is no universal accepted classification. Therefore, we cannot introduce the universal accepted classification of performance evaluation forms and procedures to develop. Compared with first approach, that means the general approach, it is better as it takes into consideration differences among types of employees. In our organization, HR manager is performing different job. Production manager is performing another different jobs. Their duties are completely different. Therefore, we cannot apply one particular form for evaluating production employees and the employees who are working in the HR department. Some examples I mentioned here. It is more appropriate if there are separate performance evaluation forms and procedure for the following common categories of employees. As example, managerial employees, it is better to develop separate performance evaluation forms and procedure to evaluate managerial employees. Professional employees, as example, accountant, engineers, likewise. It is better to develop accountant separate performance evaluation forms and procedure to evaluate the job of accountant, and another separate performance evaluation forms and procedure for evaluating the job of engineers. Technical employees is another type of employees, computer designer, technicians, and machinists. Clerical and light employees, it is better to develop another separate performance evaluation forms and procedure. That is, technical employees the duties of technical employees are differ from the duties of clerical and allied employees. Operative employees is somewhat different from the clerical and allied employees. Therefore, it is better to develop these 5 types of employees for 5 different performance evaluation forms and procedure. Another example, managerial employees, office employees, factory employees, sales employees, and field employees. It is better to design 5 separate performance evaluation forms and procedure to evaluate these types of employees. But some organization may not motivate to design performance evaluation forms and procedure separately because sometimes they may not have enough time to do that. Sometimes they may not have enough understanding about how to develop separate performance evaluation forms and procedure. Most of the organizations sometimes they may use some performance evaluation forms getting from the Google or any other sources that is not specifically matched with the organizational requirement or the duties of the job. Therefore, they may not alter or redesign their performance evaluation form. They are using common performance evaluation form. But I suggest there must at least separate performance evaluation forms and procedure for managerial employees and non-managerial employees. Otherwise, the evaluating by using same performance evaluation forms and procedure, it is not meaningful. Then we are going to design performance evaluation forms and procedure. In here, again, I want to mention there is no universal accepted template for developing or designing performance evaluation forms and procedure. When we are doing accounting, there is a universal accepted or at least locally accepted format to do that. How to prepare a balance sheet, how to prepare the final accounts. There is a locally accepted or universally accepted template. Whatever the organization, when they are doing accounting, they must follow that format and standards. But in here, when we are doing performance evaluation under the human resource management, there is no universally accepted template. Therefore, we can customize, we can design our own performance evaluation forms and procedure. That may be the another reason the organization may not prepare the performance evaluation forms and procedure. They may not have enough understanding about the performance evaluation forms and procedure. That depends on the nature of the performance evaluation forms and procedure is depends on the policies of performance evaluation. Under the policies of performance evaluation, there are 4 main sections we discussed. Address via the policies of performance evaluation. Then the policies, it may include under the performance evaluation procedure that policies are implementing when doing the performance evaluation by communicating that policies with the evaluator. That therefore the policies of performance evaluation is included in the performance evaluation procedure. Criteria and standards, performance evaluation methods, and cost. These factors, these are the main factors, may depend the template of the organizational templates of the performance evaluation forms and procedure. However, it is possible to give the following recommendations for designing better performance evaluation forms and procedure. There are some guidelines. These are not at all. Some guidelines. If you are going to develop separate performance evaluation forms and procedure to your organization. These are the basic guidelines. It is better to follow these guidelines when you are going to develop. The first recommendation is PE forms and procedure should be designed separate. PE form is used for another purpose, to keep record about the employee's performance. Procedure is used for another purpose, to communicate relevant specific guidelines to the evaluator. The purposes are different of these two documents. Therefore, it is better to develop or design separately. As example, sometime in our organization, there are 20 production employees under the supervisor 1. There are 30 production employees under the production supervisor 2. If we are developing performance evaluation form with the performance evaluation procedure as a single document, we want, when we are going to evaluate this performance, HR department should print performance evaluation forms and procedure, 20 performance evaluation forms and procedure, and give it to the supervisor 1. Another 30 production performance evaluation forms and procedure printed and handed over to the supervisor 2. When we are deciding as a single document, performance evaluation form with the performance evaluation procedure. But if we develop these two documents separately, we can printed only the 20 performance evaluation form, and with one performance evaluation procedure. Altogether, 21 printed documents we can hand it over to the supervisor 1. When we are going to evaluate these 30 employees, we can only print the 30 performance evaluation forms, and with only one production performance evaluation procedure. Altogether 31 documents. That may less than, definitely less than the, we can minimize printed document 19 performance evaluation procedure and 29 performance evaluation procedure for these two supervisors, because the same document. Therefore, when we are deciding performance evaluation forms and procedure, it is better to decide as the two separate documents. It is separated from performance evaluation procedure should be separated from the performance evaluation form. That is our first recommendation. The second one is make the form as briefer as possible. When we are designing the large performance evaluation forms and procedure as the huge document, that may, the evaluator may not motivated to read and follow that guidelines. Or sometimes, if our performance evaluation form is the huge document or very large document, the evaluator may not motivated to complete that form. Therefore, but sometimes in our organization, as the as per the objectives of performance evaluation, we should include several criteria and standards. Therefore, when we are developing performance evaluation forms and procedure, we should certify all the necessary things are included in our performance evaluation forms and procedure by removing all the unnecessary things from our performance evaluation forms and procedure. That is the second very important performance recommendations to develop better performance evaluation forms and procedure. On the other hand, if we put unnecessary things to our performance evaluation forms and the performance evaluation procedure, that may be the main reason to wastage the evaluator's time. We can save evaluator's time by removing all the unnecessary things from the performance evaluation form as well as from the performance evaluation procedure. The third recommendation, present them in a language which can be understood well by evaluators. So, most of the time, it is better to use the mother language because that is understandable for the evaluator. The main purpose of developing, deciding, and communicating these all the documents to get real evidence about the employee's performance. For that, the understanding is very important than the appearance. Therefore, use the language that can be understood by the evaluator. Fourth recommendation, develop the procedure clearly. Procedure, the developing performance evaluation procedure with the purpose of communicating. Without clear communication, we cannot implement this performance evaluation process correct way. Therefore, developing performance evaluation procedure, it should be clear, give all the necessary guidelines in a very simple way. Can be understand by the evaluator very easy, because our purpose is to communicate, especially when we are designing performance evaluation procedure, must to maintain the clearness of the idea. But we are going to communicate, that should be clear to the evaluator. Otherwise, our objective may not achieve. The fifth recommendation is introduce a suitable weighting according to the significance of the each evaluation criteria. Normally, when we are evaluating employees' performance, we are not only based on the single performance evaluation criteria. We are using. Now you have what idea about what is performance evaluation criteria. That is the factors we are going to consider when we are evaluating employees' performance. Most of the jobs we are not only depend on the one single criteria. We are using multiple criteria. Sometimes that may results criteria, behavioral criteria, or trade criteria. Likewise, we are using different criteria. But these all criteria may not equally affected to the efficiency and effectiveness of the employee's performance. Based on the significance, the results criteria sometimes may have high significance. Therefore, we should allocate high weight on that than the behavioral criteria or than the trade criteria. That is depend on the nature of the job. But some jobs may highly significant behavioral criteria. As example, receptionist. Their behavior is very important for the organization. When we are evaluating that job, the behavioral criteria may more important, maybe the more important thing, most important criteria. When we are evaluating that job, we should give high weight on the behavioral criteria. The next recommendation, reserve a separate section so as to include comments of the evaluee on evaluation given by the evaluator. This requires comment and signature of the evaluee after holding the performance evaluation interview. Performance feedback interview is very important step of the performance evaluation process. We'll discuss as our next few steps, in our next few steps of the systematic process of performance evaluation. But in here, we should allocate some space for that. After collecting evidence or after evaluating employees' performance, the main purpose of conducting performance feedback interview is give that data, that collected evidence, communicate that collected evidence to the relevant employee. Sometimes that employee or that means evaluee, that evaluee may have some idea, some feedback or some clarifications on the evaluation. Therefore, that we should allocate another space or separate section to include the comments of the evaluee. That is another recommendation to develop or deciding better performance evaluation forms and procedure. The last one, designing the forms so as to have several section parts. In the performance appraisal, we are considering different several areas. Therefore, we can develop with the performance evaluation forms as well as the performance evaluation procedure with the several sections or parts. In here, the example, contents of the typical performance evaluation form. It may more appropriate if content of the performance evaluation form includes the following sections. Section 1 or part 1 is identification information. This is very important. On whom we are going to evaluate the performance of the employee. It should be identified. Therefore, when we are designing performance evaluation form, we should allocate another very important segment to include that information, that is identification information, name of the evaluee, job title, and the relevant department. Likewise, the part 2, evaluation on traits, behaviors, and results. It means the evaluation criteria. It is part 2. The part 3, comments of the evaluator. As our previous recommendation, therefore, there should be separate segment or section to include comments of the evaluee after the after conducting performance review or performance feedback interview. Before that, comments of the evaluator, overall sometimes it may overall comments of the evaluator on evaluation, or sometimes major strength or major weaknesses of the employees, and some suggestions to improve and minimize these weaknesses. Likewise, we can allocate another separate sections for the comments of the evaluator for notes on present differences, strength, potential, and action to be taken to fulfill. Likewise, we can allocate separate section for that. Comments of the reviewing officer after conducting performance evaluation should be reviewed by the staff or responsible person. Sometimes it may be the employees or officer from the HR department. Sometimes the person who is in charge to conduct performance evaluation process. We can allocate another segment to comments of the reviewing officers. Another main document is content of the typical performance evaluation procedure. That this is used for another purpose, that is communicate the relevant specific guidelines to the evaluator. The part 1 is also basic guidelines, that is introduction and guidelines to fill up the part 1 of the evaluation form. Part 2 is evaluation guidelines. It means how to fill up how to collect performance evaluation data and how to record the performance in the performance evaluation form. Part 3, guidelines for performance feedback interviews. It is very important. Another part, the part 4, guidelines for submission of the completed performance evaluation form. Completed performance evaluation form should be, it is very important document for the organization, that because that is the main evidence document that can be used for the several other functions that is aligned with the objectives of the performance evaluation. Sometime promotion, sometime pay management, sometime increments. All these decisions are depending on the record of the completed performance evaluation form. Therefore, that document, it is completed performance evaluation form. It is a confidential document, as well as it should be submitted only the relevant parties. That is not to be submitted to the irrelevant parties. These are the main segment of the typical performance evaluation procedure. But you can alter this all the guidelines or all the format or all the sections as per your organizational requirement when you are going to develop your own performance evaluation forms and procedure. This is all about the performance evaluation forms and procedure. But now I am going to show some examples for the performance evaluation forms and procedure. This is the sample performance evaluation form I designed by using the Senior Professor Upadhyay 2002 performance evaluation of human resources. By using that book template, I altered some format. In here, part 1 is identification data. Before that, the heading should be performance evaluation form. It should be mentioned for the types of employee. As your knowledge, you already know, it is better to design, use a specific approach to design performance evaluation forms and procedure. In here, the examples for performance evaluation form which are developed by using the specific performance evaluation forms approach. That is for this form is for operative employees. The first segment, it is better to mention the organization name and the performance evaluation period, relevant period of the performance evaluation is better to include at the heading part of the performance evaluation form. However, the part 1 of performance evaluation form should be identification data. That means the name of the evaluee. Here, name is the evaluee, name of the evaluee, on whom you are going to collect performance evaluation employee, performance evaluation data. Then the job title, their job title and the position, job grade, years in the job. It means the job seniority, department, that relevant department. As our example, machine operator, production machine operator. Mr. Nihal, maybe the name of the employee, job title is the machine operator. In machine department, grade maybe grade 2, years in the job 2 years. Department or section is the production department, years in the department. He started from the same department, therefore years in the department is also 2 years. Period covered in this year, for this year, that is from 1st of January to January 2020 to 31st December of 2020. Years in the organization, he started with the same department, same job. Therefore, years in the organization is also same, 2 years. Sometimes some employees may come in from the another department. Sometimes that may differ from this years in department and the years in the organization. These two may different if that employee working in the same organization but different department. The part 2 of the evaluation form is a employee evaluation. In our evaluation form, there are 10 criteria and the 5 ratings A, B, C, D, E, and there are allocated marks specifically mentioned here. Then you can calculate the total marks. Then the part 3 is comments of the evaluation. It means comments of the evaluator. In here, the part 2 evaluation method is graphic rating scale. Graphic rating scale method which used in this performance evaluation form. The part 3, that is use the essay approach to collect performance evaluation information that categorized under the major strengths and the suggestions to maintain or enhance above mentioned strength that can be mentioned in this given space of the performance evaluation form. Another part is allocated to mention the major weaknesses of the employee and suggestions to remove above mentioned weaknesses. If there is any other additional remarks, the evaluator can use this space to mention that for that, the name of the, in here, name of the evaluator and the job position, and then date and signature. Part 4 is allocated to write comments of the evaluee, that is output from the performance review or feedback interview. After conducting performance evaluation feedback interview, if there is any comments from the evaluee, this space is allocated to that. Evaluee can mention their comments about the performance evaluation of this year. After that, the superior explain it means about the performance review feedback. The superior explained to me the evaluation, my weaknesses, strength, etc., and way of improving the maintaining my performance. Then the employee name, employee date, the date of which the discussion was made, then the signature of the employee. Then the part 5, last part, is allocated for the comments of the reviewing officer. That may be the officer in the HR department. I agree or do not agree with the evaluation and my observation not below. They can openly write the observation about the performance evaluation process. Then this is all about the performance evaluation form. The very important part is performance evaluation procedure. These two documents should be designed as the separate document, as I mentioned earlier. In our PowerPoint, it is mentioned that also have several segments. The part 1, performance evaluation procedure, and the company name and the basic information about the procedure. The first part is allocated to the basic guidelines. That is, there are several basic guidelines evaluate actual job performance of the operative employees relevant to the period of evaluation which concerned, which from 1st of January 2020 to 31st December 2020. The second guideline, second basic guideline, recording job performance data regarding each employee criterion which are relevant period is essential and use them in doing performance evaluation. Evaluation should not be done accurately according to the memory and or random judgment. That evaluation should done with the use of relevant period actual job performance. That is not to be the judgment or opinion of the employee. That is a basic guideline. You should it is guideline for the evaluators. You should be evaluated all the employees performance who's directly reporting to you as the immediate superior. That is the policy decision of the organization. The fourth one, use your own independent and impartial judgment. That is another guideline to follow when the evaluator is evaluating their job performance. Use the fifth one, ensure that prevent from following errors. There are some errors that is also mentioned under the performance evaluation procedure with the intention of these errors may be happen, therefore they can prevent these errors. The first one is central tendency. Sometimes without understanding of these errors, they may be happen, but the putting this possible errors, the intention is prevent these errors from the evaluators. Central tendency is tendency to evaluate nearly everyone as average on every criterion or many criteria. Central tendency, it means we assign 5-scale 5-scale rating in our performance evaluation form. There are 5 scale, 5 criteria, that is 5 ratings, that is A, B, C, D, and E. In here, A is the very good or excellent performance, and E is the very poor performance. Out of these 5 options, evaluator is the central tendency is tendency to evaluate nearly everyone as average. Average mean in here, in our rating scales, there are 5. A is excellent performance, and E is for very poor performance. C is for average performance. Or when we ask about the quality of the work, he put mark on the average and rating on average. That is central tendency. But without considering if the evaluator is going to be evaluate on high performance or low performance, that may risky. That should be give the reasons. But if you are evaluating on average rating, that is not problematic for the organization, as well as that may not problematic for the employee as well. Therefore, evaluator is tendency to evaluate on the central or average rating. The halo effect is another errors, tendency to rate an employee on all criteria or many criteria according to a rating given on one criterion. In other words, rating the employee as excellent or poor on one particular criterion, the evaluator goes on the rate that he or she is excellent or poor on all or many criteria. As example, some employees excellent in the quality of work. Without considering all other criteria, the evaluator is going to evaluate on excellent performance, excellent rate, give the excellent rating based on the one criteria, that is halo effect. I think you are clear. I have another opportunity to explain these errors in our next few sessions. Therefore, I not going to give the deep discussion on these errors, just for the as a component of the performance evaluation procedure. Recency effect is tendency to evaluate by considering the start string performance occurred within the most recent period of time only, instead of performance over the entire period concerned. In here, performance evaluation period is 1 year, but this evaluation is done at the month of January of the year in 2021. Therefore, the recency period is December of this year. Therefore, if some employee is performing well at the recency time period, their rating will be high. That is recency effect. Personal prejudice tendency to evaluate bias basing on some religion, race, class, sex, or other personal relations. That is another error may be happen. Here, the part 2 of the performance evaluation procedure is evaluation guidelines. The evaluation form includes 10 appraisal criteria. In here, there are 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. The criteria lead to determine the degree of effectiveness and efficiency of the employee. The seventh one, carefully evaluate every criterion separately. The evaluator should focus each criterion separately, read the 5 statements given for each criterion, and select the statements which best suit employee whose performance is being evaluated. Circle the relevant mark and enter the relevant mark in the last column. Last column is here. When you are evaluating one particular employee, the most suit rating is good performance. That is what the evaluator should do. Put the circle on this column, then put the mark that is 16 in this column. That is the guideline number 8. Then total marks and determine the aggregate evaluation by using the following statements. After completing this table, you can the evaluator can calculate the total marks. By considering these total marks, you can get the aggregate evaluation standards. If this total marks is between 81 to 100, that is excellent performance. 80 to 61, good performance. 60 to 41, satisfactory performance. 40 to 21, poor performance. 20 below 20, very poor performance. Likewise, then we can move to the standards of the performance. The first criteria is quality of work. In here, this is performance evaluation form. Below that, this part is performance evaluation procedure. The first criteria is quantity of work. Quantity of work is the first criteria, and that means the amount of productive work over the period of time under evaluation. Output exceed the standards or targets. In this organization, set targets every day or every year. This employee is exceed their production targets. Output is exceed the standards or target. We can put a circle on the 20 marks. Then we can get the rating as 16 or 20. The B meets standards targets between 91% and the 100%. That is 16 marks. We can put circle on this column and get the rating marks is 16 for this column. The third C is meets standards targets between 81% and 90%. We can put circle on this column and get that 12 marks for this rating. Likewise, we can do the evaluation. There are another 2 options. The second criteria is quality of work, general excellence of output with consideration to accuracy, carefulness, and neatness. The number of defects is 0. That is we can put A. If there is no any defects of the production, we can put circle on this column and get the 20 marks for this rating column. Likewise, the third one is attendance. Faithfulness in coming to the work, no single day of absence. We can put attendance. We can put circle on this column and get that mark for the rating column. Or if this employee is not more than 15 days of absence, we can put circle on this column. We can get 2 marks for this column. Then the fourth criteria is job knowledge, the degree of understanding about objectives, duties, responsibilities, and methodology of the job. Thorough understanding of all the phases of the job, demonstrate string desired to acquire job information, no help needed, and number of helps given is 0 during the period of evaluation. That is the excellence performance. We can put circle on this mark and get 10 marks for this column. On the other important aspects of this evaluation is what? If you examine this performance evaluation form carefully, there are different weights for different criteria. These are the weights. Out of 100, the quality of work is important, 20%. The quantity of work is important, 20%. But attendance is important, 10%. Job knowledge is important for the 10%. Because we are evaluating operative employees of the organization. Dependability is important, 5%. Non-availability is 10%. Cooperation is 10%. Safety and economy is 5%. Likewise, based on the different criteria, we are allocating different weights on each criteria. If you examine this form, you can get idea about the weighting system of the different criteria. We are basically focused on 10 different criteria and is weighted. There is a weighted system. When we move to the procedure, there are 10 different criteria. Quality of work is here. The quantity of work, quality of work. The third one is attendance, and the fourth one job knowledge. Fifth one dependability and non-availability. Cooperation is the seventh one. Safety and economy, eighth one, and ninth the cleanness. The last one is punctuality. Likewise, there are 10 different criteria, and in here the performance evaluation procedure is explained what expected standards to put the given standards. There are 5 ratings, A, B, C, D, and E. How you evaluate, it is clearly mentioned under the statements in front of the relevant rating. You can put the circle and get the total marks. Based on the total marks, you can calculate the aggregate evaluation of the performance of the employee. Then the part 3, guidelines for conducting feedback interview, discuss the evaluation with the relevant employees in order to give a feedback. Get completed part 4 of the evaluation form by the relevant employee. Then the part 4, guideline for submission, it is very important to the complete performance evaluation procedure. Completed performance evaluation form must be submitted to the HR manager on or before 31st January of 2021 with securing confidentiality. Likewise, it is give the very clear guidelines how to conduct performance evaluation of this particular group of employees and this particular organization. I think you got some clear idea about the performance evaluation forms and procedure. I will upload these 2 performance evaluation forms and procedure to the LMS and this video for your further studies. You can download it and get printed. Please practice how to do the performance evaluation, and there are some other reviewing questions in my slides. You can use that also. Summary: today we discuss differences between performance evaluation forms and performance evaluation procedure. 2 basic approaches in designing performance evaluation forms and procedure, that is general approach and specific approach. Some recommendations for designing better performance evaluation forms and procedure. There are 7 performance recommendations we discuss. Contents of the typical performance evaluation form. I explained with the sample performance evaluation forms and the sample performance evaluation procedure. I think that is enough today. These are the reviewing questions you can answer by using today knowledge. Develop performance evaluation form and procedure which can be used for the evaluating selected job performance of the in an organization. These are my references. You can use this learning material for further studies. Thank you very much for participate the today's session.